Hi, this week is on the family, and it just so happens that we had four of the grandchildren with us for the long weekend while their parents were out. So it was an interesting experience in doing a little bit of parenting, a little bit of teaching them things. They tell me they like learning stuff, so I tell them all kinds of stuff. And spent some time with one of them. Gave her an electronics set that I kind of made for Christmas, and so we sat down together and learned how to use that. And that's kind of interesting. Anyway, you know, the family is something that pretty much all cultures that survive, had the concept of family. And you might wonder what's different with the Catholic idea of family, with the Christian idea of family, what was brought differently from anything that came before. And I think that's a good question. By the way, the book this week is really, really excellent. So do make sure you go through the entire text on it, and I'll refer to it a little bit here. One of the things that's interesting to me at the same time is that for a long time, governments thought that preserving families was a way of preserving the state. It kept everything going. They wanted stability, but things are changing. And as the writer said, the government will support families as long as it's in their best interest. And we may be seeing some of that changing now because now there's real, forces against the family. And so you have to decide whether you think that's true and what you want to do about it. Best thing you can do about it is having a good family, of course. So one of the things that comes up in the difference in the way we look at family is that before it was mostly about continuing the line, building familial wealth, building territory, that kind of thing. For people that just stayed on the farm, it was just about, keeping the farm going. But a lot of having children was about those children taking care of the parents when they're older. So the parents would raise the children in a way that would ensure their own care when they got older. One of the things that's different in Christianity, and particularly in Catholicism, is the idea that we don't take the children doing that as an absolute. Children could become priests, nuns, brothers, something like that, and then they wouldn't be able to take care of parents. So it's not about continuing the line, continuing the name, that kind of thing. It really is about preparing the children for life and helping the children basically get to heaven. In a family, everybody's supposed to be helping each other get to heaven. You may not know that in some of the cultures around, the older cultures, if a child was born and was not considered fit, they didn't look healthy enough, they didn't cry hard enough, that kind of thing, they would actually just take them out to a mountain or a hill nearby, just lay them down on the ground and leave them and not even go back, and the child would just die of exposure. It was the idea that they didn't want to have people that were weak in their society, so they would get rid of them that way, which may also be something we're somewhat returning to now, because as you know, if parents know that their child has Down syndrome or some defect, the doctors will encourage them to abort the child. And so they're trying to make kind of a perfect society by getting rid of the people that are not, fit. But that isn't our idea of family. We can learn a lot. If a lot of the families that have had disabled children actually grew in many ways from it and worked with it. So anyway, that's a little bit of an aside, but that's another one of the differences is that we are here to take care of our children as parents, and we don't judge them and say, well, you're not good enough, so we're just going to let you die. One of the questions that comes up in parenting, the children ask especially, is why don't you just, actually, people that don't have children ask this question. Somebody did it recently with us, is why don't you just let children do whatever they want? Why do you have to discipline them? Why do you have to teach them things? Just let them figure out life, and that's really great. And it's usually not parents that have those comments. And the reason is because it's our duty as parents and extended family. So even though I'm a grandparent, it's still my job to help my grandchildren to grow and become the best people they can be. So in doing that, it's really a training. You'll see that in the book, where it talks about the family as a school of faith, in which we learn how to love, act, and treat others. It's a school of love. So that's something to think about too. In the process of all this, we know that right now half of all children will experience divorce, and a pretty good portion of the ones that what is it, 75% of the ones that are divorced and then their parent remarries will experience divorce with the remarried parent as well. So they'll have to go through it twice. Uh, I'll put some links down there for you on some of the effects of divorce, just because I think it's good to see. It's good to be aware of it. Uh, it's certainly nothing about the child when the folks get divorced, when the parents get divorced, but we do need to acknowledge how difficult this is, and that sometimes it's just going to happen no matter what we do, uh, and support those folks. Anyway, you can see the statistics, so I won't go into those here. One of the things that I've observed in families, and I try to avoid in raising our own 6 children, was power struggles. Now, you may not experience this in your own family, but in some families, it really becomes about power. You may have heard the term, at least in a movie or TV show, but I've seen it in real life. My house, my rules. You know, that the idea that the parents own the house and everything else, the children are guests and the children have to go do what the parents want because the parents own everything. Well, that's not really very loving, and it's not really the way that the church would have it be. It's not really Christ. It's more that we have an obligation to the children, and any rules, any discipline, anything that is enforced is done for the betterment of the child, and maybe for their own protection and for the protection of their brothers and sisters and everything like that, protection of society. But the idea is that it's not like a kingdom. It's not like the parents are the rulers and the children are the subjects. Um, Children in the Catholic Church, children have an equal dignity to the parents. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ, and we don't consider anybody beneath us. However, with the experience of parents, they have a duty to teach and to raise the child well. So you could respond with some of your own experience with that, ways that your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody, kind of work to form you in some area or to correct something, and how you felt about that. You can talk about, what you think is unreasonable, but I think maybe it's better to focus on the positive stuff and what works, because everybody, can imitate that. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it wrong. With us, I was really careful never to say anything about my house, and like owning stuff, because everything's a gift from God anyway. But with the children, we share the place and we live there. And just because I go out and, have the job and everything, and for most of the years of our marriage, for most of the 40 years, I was the only one working. Carol took care of the house. The idea for a Christian to say, well, I'm making the money, so I get to make the rules, is just so horrible, I can't even stand it. So that just doesn't happen. So it can come down to being a power struggle, and you'll see that you'll hear about children rebelling. You may have had that experience. But a lot of the time we make things, it's kind of like what I was talking about last week. We make our relationship with God, something it was never intended to be, when we make deals and say, well, I'll do this if you'll do that for me, and expecting things that are not reasonable. Okay, so have you ever heard of nature versus nurture? So nature versus nurture is the idea that, is it born in us who will be? That's the nature part. Is it formed by our genes and stuff only? Or are we formed by our experiences, nurture? Are we formed by what our parents do? So I tend to think it's both. Within free will, it certainly means that it can't just be pure nature. It can't just be that we're however our genes tell us to be and we don't get to make a choice. That doesn't make any sense. But that's nature versus nurture. That's the thing that's worth looking up and thinking about a little bit. Think about that as you're reading the text. So let's see. Informed conscience within the family is a great place to develop the conscience. As Catholics, we're looking for the conscience to be, well, there's a good quote that I'll put up on here. But we're looking for our conscience to be the thing that guides us. It's not some other voice. It's something that has to be developed, informed. It's kind of a mental ability. It's kind of an emotional ability too, in some ways. But a well-formed conscience is something that the parents can contribute to, not just by telling the child what to do or think, but by asking questions, by evaluating things that happen and then having a discussion and say, okay, this is what happened. How do you feel about that? What could you have done differently? What should you have done differently? Could you have done anything differently? Just helping the child do that long enough that the child can then start to do that themselves. And that's really what it comes down to. Parents are not exactly training wheels, but they're kind of there to help the child until they get to a certain point that they can do more themselves. One of the conversations I had with my granddaughter, the one that's 8, was, she's obviously telling me, oh, I don't like having the rules. I don't like having my parents tell me what to do and everything. And one of the things we talked about was we used to have a tree. Well, we still have the tree out front. We planted a tree out front that just had a really, really thin trunk on it. And it was, it would have just probably bent right over if we'd let it. And we get some strong winds. And so we put 4 really sturdy poles, or 3 really sturdy poles around it that were, that thick. And then, you've seen this before, where you tie stuff onto it and that supported the tree. And over the years, this tree is the slowest growing tree. And over the years, the trunk finally got thick enough that we were able to take the poles away. The trunk was strong enough that it wouldn't blow over in the wind. We took those poles off years ago, but the poles were probably on there, I don't know, 5-10 years. We finally took them off. And we've had strong winds, and that tree has not broken. The tree is still healthy, and the trunk gets thicker every year. I can't say I can tell that it's getting thicker. It is a slow-growing tree. But that I gave her that example, and I think she understood that all the rules and all the discipline and all the parenting is mostly there until you're strong enough that you can start to do those things for yourself. I spoke at my daughter's wedding. My third daughter got married recently. I spoke at her wedding.
Be a safe place for other people. Be a place of peace, and don't let the evils of the world pass through you to others. Stop it here. I stopped my part. Mom stopped her part. We didn't get it all. And so my children had to deal with some stuff that I wish they wouldn't have to deal with. But I'm hoping that you will do your part. And you'll do it a little better, maybe. And between you, you'll not just be a place of peace for children that you might have, or children you might adopt, but also for the people in the community, especially for young people, because it's so hard for them to find peace right now. It's really, really hard. And if I talk to young people at rehearsal dinners, it's partly because I understand how hard life really is, and I want life to be better. So we did what we could do. You'll do it, I think, much better. And I admire you both very much.
So the main thing out of that is that the parents create and aunts, uncles, grandparents that live with you, that kind of thing. The family creates a safe place for the children to grow up. It's kind of like the poles, but in another way of looking at it. Dating should consider all these things. It's funny because in this culture, in this overall society, we tend to look at dating as a recreational thing. People just go out to have somebody to go hang out with, and some date a lot of people over time, and other people don't. My daughters actually never dated anybody. They just, one guy, kind of already knew he was the one, went out with him for a while, married him, and that was it. So that's kind of interesting. If you're really forming strong relationships and dating and then breaking up, and forming relationships with somebody else and then breaking up, or worse, like me. I had a very dysfunctional childhood. I dated the same person for 5 years. We broke up every 6 weeks. It was horrible. And my parents didn't get along, and they divorced when I was 2. But I saw them and how they were, and I was doing the same darn thing. It just didn't make any sense. So with dating like that, it's really just practice for divorce. It's just practicing breaking up. You get married, then you get divorced. Goodness knows some people do it a lot. So think about that, all the things here about family in the book and what we're talking about here, maybe you could respond to this. How do you work this in your life? Do you date? Do you not date? And I don't know if you want to share that or not, but I'll leave it up to you. Uh, but if you do you really think about, do I even want to waste time going out with somebody that cannot live this way? Somebody that I'm going to fight with, somebody that's not going to be a good parent. And I know, if you think you never want to have children, you can let me know. But from listening to your comments, a lot of you are thinking that you want to have a family and have children. And it's a sad thing. I've certainly had a lot of friends that married somebody who was not a fit parent, didn't want to be a parent even sometimes. And then they ended up divorced and they had to raise their child on their own. And that was a tough life. Uh, let's see. This is kind of a specialized thing, but I wanted to mention it. Sometimes it's easy to look at people and think, oh, they've got it all together. Their marriage is really great. Their children are successful and everything else. But you never really know what it's like at home. So I've learned by experience with these, where I've seen things I would rather not have seen maybe. Sometimes it's good to understand the children may be having a very hard time. Just because the parents look very religious, just because the parents look like wonderful, friendly, fun people, their home life may be terrible. You just never know. So watch out for yourself, that it never becomes a show, that it never becomes a thing of, oh, let me show everybody what a great family we have. Just live. And be a little sensitive to it with children, that, I'm just kind of funny now after seeing this, that I don't tell people, oh, I think your parents are so wonderful, and oh, you're such a lucky child, because they may be thinking, yeah, you don't know what it's like at home. They're beating me every night. No, I'm not a lucky child. I'm just stuck here. So, that just comes out of some intense personal experience with things I've seen. Let's see. Okay, we covered all that stuff. The keys to a healthy relationship is in the book right here. And talks about time. We need to make time for a person to be a significant part of our lives. It's really easy in marriage, in raising a family, to not have dinner together, really quiet time, dinner together every night. Sometimes one or both parents work at night and you have other family members, and we do what we have to do, but we should try where we can. Every chance we can, we need to sit down together and have that good time. Some families, from what you've told me, have a particular night of the week that they have prayer time or some kind of special family time. There used to be a family night together thing that was going on decades ago, and maybe that's still going on. It's a nice idea. For us, when we were raising our children, we would talk a lot like this at the table. We would also, I would read. So while they're eating their food, I'd eat something and then I'd read from a book. Something that was pretty entertaining usually, but it was always something that in some way would help their faith. We got through the Bible that way. That's how we read the Bible. We just went through it a bit at a time. And then I would read a little bit, and then I'd start to eat, and then they would all talk, and they would just all say what they thought of it. I can tell you, for SATs, they had a lot easier time on the essay questions, because they'd had the practice of talking about something that had been read. Loyalty is an interesting thing. That's a common trait in families that people value. But you have to be careful. If a parent is wrong, or if something that the family, that's kind of like a family tradition that isn't really good, like just a big tradition that you just got to make a lot of money and everybody kind of brags about how much money they make. If something's not good, it's not good. That loyalty to something that's not good is not good. So there's a kind of loyalty where we don't take our business outside the family. I mean, if there's something wrong going on, that's different. But just for normal stuff, don't tell embarrassing facts about your brother or sister, mom, dad, whatever. That kind of stuff, that's part of that loyalty idea. Truth, and the idea that we should not be lying to one another. One of the things for us was that we never lied to our children. And we got in trouble with this with other family members. wife's family and stuff like that, because we didn't do the Santa Claus thing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just telling you, for us, we didn't. I mean, we have little a statue of Santa Claus, all that kind of stuff. That's fine. It was just that, they figure it out pretty quickly, and we just weren't going to lie to them about it. So if they said, is Santa Claus real? It's like, you know what? There was a St. Nicholas, but no, a large man in a red suit is not coming down our chimney, and we don't even have a chimney. At the time, we didn't have a chimney. So I don't know. You have to figure that out for yourself. But we just did not want to lie to our children. Now, children will naturally lie because they get in trouble or they're afraid of getting in trouble, stuff like that. You have to be patient with children. But just kind of think about that. Make a commitment to truth, and honest and open communication is really, really important. Flexibility. Oh, I love this one. Not everything can be planned in a relationship. I did not expect to have my grandchildren over for this many days, but I just go with it. Yesterday I got nothing done on anything because I just was with them all day. Carol, my wife, was gone, and so I had to keep them amused all day. So we went to the park and they rollerbladed, and I kind of, played with the little one who's 2 years old, while the others are rollerblading around on the sidewalk in the park. And, you just roll with it. You just deal with whatever it is. That's the way it works. Sometimes one person will have a strong need, and you drop it. The whole family sometimes will drop everything to support that family member. And you could maybe talk about that in your response if you've experienced that. That's a lovely thing. If you've never seen it, I do recommend seeing the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's an old movie, 1946, I think. I know it's on Amazon for whatever. I don't know if it's on Netflix or whatever. But anyway, if you can see that. And by the way, don't forget you can rent DVDs. You can get DVDs for free from the library, from the public library. You just check them out and great. Make a donation if you can. Give $1. Anyway, It's a Wonderful Life is about a guy. We just watched this with the grandchildren and talked about it. It's about a guy that he's got a thing he wants to. He wants to go travel and get rich and have all these adventures, and things in the family keep drawing him back. And then his community keeps drawing him back, and everything keeps holding him back from what he wants. And, he just, at the end, he just hates his life. And then he gets to see what his town would have been like if he had never been born. And then he realizes the part that he played in everybody's life and how much better the world is because he's there. And then he finally accepts that all this is good. And, it has a happy ending. But it's really a dark movie. It's very, very depressing in parts of the movie. But I do recommend it. Let's see what else. Joy on this list, on here. Joy is one of them. And, we bond together with each other really well in times of trouble. Sometimes we do, oftentimes. But also there has to be joy. There has to be a good time within the family. It has to be fun. If there isn't a lot of laughter, probably the children are not really going to become the adults they could be. Even among the saints, if you really go through and read a lot of quotes from saints, you'll find lots that show a sense of humor. And Jesus had a sense of humor, and you can see it in the Gospels if you read the Gospels. But there has to be joy there. There has to be love, but love can be a very quiet thing. But you got to have some laughs. You have to have joy. You have to rejoice in each other's company. And when I would see my children do something for the first time, some of mine would sometimes say something funny at the table or at a gathering, and it would just be completely unexpected, and it was so hilarious, and everybody would laugh, and we all just had such a good time. And this weekend, when the grandchildren were here, it was great because they would come up with stuff. Even the 2-year-old would say something that was hilarious. And, it might not make any sense, but there was something about the way she said it that was really funny. And we try for that because it's a hard thing for us to live together in peace. And the Confucius, who was just a very wise person that lived, what, 2,500 years ago or something. Confucius said that, if there's peace within you, then you can have peace in the family. And if you have peace in the family, you can have peace in the village. And he goes on out, to the whole nation. Um, so when we are learning about the faith like this, we're trying to become peaceful people. We're trying to become complete people. We're trying to be holy, try to be like God. And ideally, a family is a gathering of saints. Doesn't mean perfect people, but it's a gathering of saints that are all trying to love one another. And if we can love each other in the family, then we have a chance that we can love each other in the community and maybe spread that love out to the rest of the world and make things better. So, hope you enjoyed the book and this little bit, and I will talk to you soon. And I'm looking forward to your responses. Thank you.